What ho, YouTube! Thank you for joining me for the thrilling conclusion of an epic 3-part trilogy I like to call The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly. For those of you who may not have caught it, I reviewed the 1993 version of the Three Musketeers, the 2011 version of the Three Musketeers, and now I'm going to review the 2001 version. If you haven't had the chance to watch the first 2 episodes in this 3-part trilogy, please step back, or I fear you might be at a loss while watching this one. And so, without further ado, I give you The Ugly One. The movie begins with D'Artagnan learning from Daddy how to swash and buckle. Then Febra shows up, or the man who would be Rochefort if this movie made just a little bit more sense, shows up with a posse and kills Daddy dead. Then he kills Mommy dead. Then little D'Artagnan slashes at Febra and takes out dude's left eye. And then rather than kill him, he rides away. Cool old dude who is an actual Frenchman, Planchet, saves D'Artagnan and promises to teach him how to be a musketeer. Years later, Darty, now a man, goes to Paris with Planchet. Gets into some shit along the way, meets Rochefort, who isn't really a bad guy in this one. I'll explain it. I'll explain it later. Darty finds out from Porthos and Aramis that the Musketeers have been suspended since the recent imprisonment of their leader, Monsieur Traville. Then D'Artagnan meets his love interest, Francesca Bonacieux. Darty and Francesca make Google eyes at each other, and this point is made.
She thinks she's something special because her mother embasses for the Queen.
Later, Darty plots to break Traville out of prison, ends up enlisting the help of Aramis and Porthos. Success is had, and the 2 Musketeers take young Darty out drinking, where they meet Athos. If he were just a drunk and not the de facto leader of the group. Athos doesn't really like Darty for reasons. So in a previous scene, Traville had told Darty and company about a plot to embarrass the king and create tension between France and its allies by assassinating the Duke of Buckingham. So they squat up and saved the day, thanks to Franny foreshadowing.
If I tell the Queen, you'll be back cleaning the palace sewers!
And PD plot device over here.
Tell me all about the palace sewers.
Go crawl around in them yourself.
Later! Francesca has this big favor to ask D'Artagnan. He's got to take the Queen somewhere? To do something?
What you do is most important for France.
And it feels really not all that important, and it creates a lot of pointless drama between D'Artagnan and his newfound friends, the Three Musketeers, who are, you know, I'll get into that later. Febra finally meets Darty. Febra steals Darty's girl and the Queen and whisks them off to a castle. Febra returns to Paris, finds out the truth about D'Artagnan's past, and then kills the old man while burning down his house. Darty returns to Paris, finds Traville's house engulfed in flames, and has a fun little chat with Aramis.
Where's Traville? We carried what was left of him out of here a few minutes ago.
Richelieu tells Darty where to find Francesca and the Queen, too. I mean, I guess. And then he asks him to kill Febra for him.
I will kill your monster, but not for you.
Then Darty asks the Musketeers for help, they tell him to fuck off, and then eventually show up to help him storm the castle. Darty kills Febra in this insanely choreographed sword fight. They rescue the Queen and Francesca, and the heroes are rewarded with medals of bravery. And then I guess Darty marries Franny. They just sort of ride away together. Things I liked! My favorite is actually the ugly one, and here's why. the swashing, the buckling, the swashing, the buckling. But in all seriousness, the fight choreography in this movie is more resembling of a kung fu film than your average swashbuckling flick. And it really sets this one apart from the others. Personally, I think it adds to the overall watchability of the movie, but I can totally understand how this over-the-top kind of action can really put the viewer out of the cinematic experience and even cause a few groans of discontent. I mean, seriously, just like look at this. I mean, it's obviously stuntmen, but I mean, look at it. That's some cinematic shit right there. And I call this movie The Ugly One because it's clearly a labor of love. Someone or some group of someones cared a whole awful lot about making this film. It's fun, and it's pretty well paced, and refreshingly different from the other two movies. It's ugly because it has its flaws, but it's still pretty goddamn watchable. Also, The Ugly One has the catchiest theme song. But you know, the 90s one has this. Let's make it all for love. Aramis in The Ugly One, played by Nick Moran, the guy from Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Jesus Christ, you could choke a dozen donkeys on that. And you're ugly and over 100 pound.
I love him. This iteration of Aramis has no religious affiliation whatsoever. And yeah, he might be the heartthrob of the trio, but that's really only because Porthos and Athos are fat drunks.
This wine is rejuvenating.
Don't get too rejuvenated.
He's arguably the only musketeer in the whole movie who has anything even remotely resembling an arc. But it's pretty weak at best, and it hinges mostly on his relationship to D'Artagnan. The movie focuses so little on the Three Musketeers that when they do show up, you're kind of just left wanting more. In The Ugly One, Rochefort is not, repeat, not the Man in Black. Weird, right? For this movie, they made up another character, and they named him Febre, and he's played by Tim Roth. Febre is introduced at the beginning of the movie. He is established as a former musketeer who has since left their ranks to join the Cardinal's Guard, like you do. He kills D'Artagnan's mother and father in front of the little protagonist. While this sets up their inevitable showdown at the end of the movie, it also provides some much-needed backstory for the character. This makes him more interesting to the audience, more complicated. And while Febre is a mad dog who delights in violence and even threatens a child at knife point, the audience gets to understand him a little bit better and root for the hero to take him out because he's evil. I'll admit it, he's not super well developed. I love Tim Roth. I don't think he can do wrong, actually. I think he did once.
They're gonna focus on Lawton.
That's it, Lawton. Going after a church in Lawton.
No, never mind. He's never done wrong. No, I love Tim Roth. He's still way more interesting than Mads Mikkelsen. He's not as good as Michael Wincott. I'll give you that. Not everyone can be Michael Wincott. I certainly can't, apparently. Now, Rochefort is played by David Schofield, who pretty much just shows up in a couple of scenes to prove that he's a lackey of the Cardinal while not actually doing anything outright evil. And then Febre kills the shit out of him. But why? Every other movie has made Rochefort the Cardinal's right-hand man, and the main antagonist to D'Artagnan's protagonist. So why make the distinction? My theory, loose as a wizard's sleeve though it may be, is that this was done as a nod to the book, wherein Rochefort and Darty are ordered by the Cardinal to be friends. He does die attempting to stop a common enemy that they have in Febre. Mostly just to sort of end the madness that his boss set in motion, but you know, he fucking fails. And it's weird because you almost give a damn when he dies. And this, at the very least, in my humble opinion anyway, has the makings of decent character building. However, the real reason for the separation of Rochefort and the Man in Black in The Ugly One remains the subject of speculation. To me anyway. I'm sure somebody fucking knows. Audience participation. Comment your theories. God damn it. Do it. So I know you watched it. Some things you didn't like. No.
Do you have a name?
A name? Yes, of course. D'Artagnan.
Are you certain?
Not if you don't like it.
It wasn't always like this. Once we were filled with would-be musketeers.
What happened?
They kept getting killed.
They talk pretty fucking funny. It's like it was written in another language and then entered into Google Translate to produce an English copy of the script. My favorite example of that is this scene.
Do not turn your back on me, D'Artagnan, for I will fight you!
Do not fight me, Aramis, or I will kill you.
Some of the dialogue is fun.
Standing like this, more likely to attract some attention.
What do you suggest?
That you trust me.
A stranger, dressed as a cardinal's guard.
You're not in the spirit of this, are you?
That's even witty. But moments like this...
How is it someone like me has the ear of the Queen? My mother came from Spain. She was her seamstress, perhaps more, perhaps her confidant. And since I was a little girl, since my mother died, the Queen has always been kind to me.
They cheapen the good moments. You know, somewhere along the line, somebody must have known better and just didn't make the effort. Can we talk for a second about how all of the accents in all of these movies are all over the fucking place? In the good one, all the good guys have American accents.
Athos, Porthos, and Aramis.
Hello.
Nice to meet you again.
Pleasure.
In the bad one, everyone has English accents.
Your accent! I love you. Perhaps we could go elsewhere. I think the Padre may be right.
And in the ugly one, the accent game's just kind of all over the place. American, French, German, English, and whatever the fuck this guy's supposed to be.
I have a document from King Louis guaranteeing me safe passage in France.
Like in all the movies, D'Artagnan's the protagonist, but this one kind of writes out the Three Musketeers, who are all supposed to be his mentors, and while he definitely seems to have won them over by the end of the movie, they spend the better part of the flick acting like they don't really like each other. I think both Aramis and Athos draw on him kind of for no reason. Like, more than once. This gives the impression that the filmmakers wanted the audience not to like these characters, which is a big change from the other movies, not to mention the source material. And I think it kind of works against a lot of the conflict it creates in the film. Drama that feels forced, poorly structured, man, that's just lazy writing. D'Artagnan is played by Justin Chambers. This is a more dangerous take on the character than the other iterations. Older in appearance than O'Donnell and Lerman. Chambers' Darty is driven not only by the desire to join the Musketeers, but to exact revenge against the man who killed his father. Chambers' portrayal of Darty also suffers from similar character issues as Lerman's, in that they both seem to be superhuman in their prowess with the sword. And they're both possessed of wit and cleverness that allows them to think around corners. As a result, the viewer is left with very little to relate to this protagonist, which causes the movie's overall pathos to suffer. Given that D'Artagnan is, especially in this iteration, the vehicle for the movie, what I would have changed. There's this sequence I talked about earlier, I think, where D'Artagnan has to escort the Queen to someplace to do something, and it creates all this drama for Darty. It doesn't really pay off. Really just a few fun action sequences and a face-to-face between Batman and the Joker. I mean, Darty and Febra. This movie would have benefited from Darty inviting the Three Musketeers to help him escort the Queen somewhere to do something. Darty asked them to help foil the Cardinal's plan to assassinate the Duke of Buckingham, but because Francesca tells him not to tell a soul about this secret mission, Darty opts to act like a dick to the Musketeers, who coincidentally have just shown up to ask him to help them free more imprisoned Musketeers. If he had just explained the situation, I think the Queen would have welcomed the additional swords to keep her safe, and could have helped flesh out the characters of the Three Musketeers a little bit better, instead of just portraying them as moody drunks. Their time away could have still hit all the same beats. The exchange with the Hessian in the inn, the carriage chase, the secret meeting with the Queen's old friend, except maybe this time, the Three Musketeers stay with the Queen while Darty and Franny go swimming.
Not after. It's the Queen.
The scene where Febra shows up for a face-to-face with D'Artagnan can still go the same way, but when he shows up to abduct the Queen, Musketeers are there. And they're like, it ain't gonna happen. And they shut them down. But they fail to rescue Francesca. So Darty comes rolling back and he's all like, oh no, I failed to protect the... And they're like, it's cool, dude, we saved the queen. And he's all like, what, you didn't save Francesca? And they're all like, we didn't even see that chick. Like, what are you even talking about? And he's like, Now when they get back to Paris is a chance for a more motivated and satisfying falling out between the characters. Darty's in the doghouse because he distracted the Three Musketeers from their real responsibility. They aided D'Artagnan in freeing Treville from jail, which sort of makes him a target.
Treville was waiting for you, D'Artagnan. When this fire started, he was waiting for you.
So then I have killed him.
And Darty can likewise be upset with them because they didn't save his girlfriend. And you can still have that scene at the end of the movie where Darty, you know, is like, well, I'm going to save Francesca myself and stop Fabre. And the Musketeers can act like they're not going to help him, but then show up anyways because they're good dudes after all. And, you know, make some of the drama feel a little less forced. But again, all of these ravings, they're just my opinion.
Thank you again, viewers, from the bottom of my heart. Stay tuned, for I have plans to review more stuff. And if you would try and stop me, you shall taste my steel.
Are you glad to be done with the Three Musketeers? Because I fucking know I'm glad to be done with the Three Musketeers. The Clearing the Queue theme song and most of the original music used in this episode was written and recorded by my good friend Chuck Miller. And again, the link and the thing, you know the drill at this point. It's, Jesus, it's... You guys hear that? No. No. No.
Haven't I suffered enough?